Hi everyone, in Module 3 we will be discussing metabolic detoxification. The impact of toxicity on health can be quite severe. Our daily lives subjects us to constant exposure to a multitude of environmental toxins. These toxins can remain in the body for many years, and research suggests that we all maintain toxic contamination in our bodies on a regular basis due to this ongoing exposure. Toxicants in the environment include a wide range of compounds, such as heavy metals, organic pesticides, drugs, and industrial compounds, and our bodies must be able to manage and excrete this wide range of potentially damaging substances. Toxic metals, including lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic, are ubiquitous in the environment and often have delayed effects because they accumulate in the body. For example, lead can be sequestered in the bone, replacing calcium, where it has a half-life of 62 years. Consequences of lead toxicity include DNA damage, depressed immune system function, anemia, hypertension, kidney disease, and increased tooth decay. The first four metals listed here, arsenic, mercury, lead, and cadmium, are the most common problematic heavy metals, commonly found in the general population. The bottom four are more likely to be as a result of industrial exposure. The greatest toxin exposure by far is through what we put in our mouths. Foods, drugs, and water may all contain toxic substances that move through our gastric system into the intestines where they can easily be absorbed. Over 10,000 chemicals are added to the food supply, and an average person consumes over 6 kilograms of these additives per year. This startling report from the Center of Disease Control tested the blood and urine of a sample of the American population and found 212 chemicals present in virtually all of them. 6 of these chemicals in particular were identified as potential health hazards. These included the chemical PDE, which is used as a flame retardant in clothing and electrical wires. It's known to cause thyroid and brain disorders. Bisphenol A, found in plastics and can linings, which is a reproductive, developmental, and systemic toxicant. This article, published in the Journal of American Medical Association in 2008, states that analysis of the NHANES data found a strong relationship between urinary concentrations of bisphenol A and metabolic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and liver enzyme abnormalities. Perfluorooctanoic acid, used in non-stick cookware, stain-resistant clothing, and food packaging, has been shown to contribute to infertility, as well as liver and immune system dysfunction. While acrylamide, a chemical carcinogen formed when carbohydrate-containing foods are cooked at very high temperatures, so we'll find it in French fries and fried chicken, and also in certain plastics and cosmetics, has been linked to cancer and neurological dysfunction. They also found mercury, which is predominantly from seafood origin, which has known neurological impacts. And then lastly, MTBE, a gasoline additive that's actually no longer in use, but it's still detectable in the environment, and it's been known to cause neurological and reproductive problems. And remember, these were just a handful of the 212 chemicals that were identified in the blood and urine of that sample population. Additional environmental toxins to consider are molds in processed foods, of course medications, alcohol, so-called lifestyle chemicals, and other byproducts of food preparation. For example, processed meats like cold cuts and sausages contain nitrosamines, and charbroiled or meats cooked at high temperatures form polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are known toxins and procarcinogens. Then there's also endogenous toxins, toxins that don't come from the outside but from within our own bodies. These can be a direct result of dysbiosis, an imbalance in the microflora in our gut. Toxic metabolites of bacteria and yeast can work to disrupt your metabolism. Lovely sounding byproducts such as putrescine and cadaverine have a direct effect on metabolism, while ammonia, another byproduct, creates a burden on the liver and kidneys. As mentioned, yeast metabolites, they can disrupt the Krebs cycle, affecting energy metabolism. Probably a good reason why people with candida often feel so severely fatigued. Deconjugated bile acids, another byproduct, can act as procarcinogens. This is often found in patients with small bowel bacterial overgrowth, if you recall from Module 1. This is a condition when bacteria or pathogens from the lower intestine migrate upwards into the small bowel. And this is often seen as a side effect of chronic proton pump inhibitor use. Beta-glucuronidase is an enzyme that deconjugates estrogens in the gut so that they're easily reabsorbed into the bloodstream. This increases estrogenic load and, of course, the risk of breast cancer. So is a detoxification program really necessary? Well, if you consider the toxic environment we live in, and various sources of toxins both endogenously and externally, the question is really not if we're toxic, but how toxic are we? And how would one go about recognizing a patient who could really benefit from a detoxification protocol? Well, common signs and symptoms of environmental toxicity include a broad range of symptoms. Very varied and very lengthy the list is, but it can include things like acne, rashes, headaches, aches and pains, fatigue, muscle weakness, tinnitus, fertility problems, memory loss, and chronic immune system depression. The list is very long and varied. Certain disease states can actually be linked directly to environmental exposure of toxins and can include many types of cancers and all those syndromes that are characterized by fatigue, muscle weakness, and cognitive dysfunction. Here you can see chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, neurodegenerative disorders, even autism. So the human detoxification system is driven by a complex system of enzymatic reactions and is regulated by a large number of mechanisms. Since these mechanisms are affected by numerous external and internal factors, it's now recognized that each individual has a particular detoxification profile, defined by his or her own specific environmental and genetic condition. So if someone is suffering from toxicity-related symptoms, what can be done about it? Well, by temporarily reducing the incoming toxic burden and by optimizing the body's ability to metabolize and excrete toxins, we can help to bring the body back into a state of balance. There are changes one can make to the environment that will help, such as eliminating chemicals that are usually used around the home and the garden, or the chemicals in your personal hygiene and cosmetic products. Another important factor to consider is your water source. It's definitely preferable to drink filtered water and to also use filtered water to shower with, as when you heat up regular tap water and then push it through in a high pressure through a nozzle, it's going to release many of the toxins into a gaseous form which can easily be inhaled. Also, one needs to consider the toxins in our food supply, not only pre-packaged foods and foods with artificial colorings and preservatives, even fresh foods. Unfortunately, most of the fresh produce in our supermarkets are covered in pesticide residue. So one really wants to try and eat organically as much as possible, but it can be hard to find a wide variety of organic produce. So consider using the following lists developed by the Environmental Working Group to make your options a little easier. This list, called the Dirty Dozen, outlines 12 different kinds of fruits and vegetable crops that are definitely preferable if you eat organic. Essentially, these crops are known to have high pesticide residue, and if you eat them conventionally grown, you're really not, you're going to be getting in a lot of these chemicals, basically. And unfortunately, it contains some very popular fruits and vegetables, like strawberries and peaches and apples and blueberries, bell peppers and spinach. So as much as possible, one needs to try and source these from an organic source. However, the Clean 15 is a list of foods that are okay to eat conventionally grown because they have the lowest pesticide residues. And here you can also see some popular options like avocado, sweet peas and asparagus, kiwi fruit, cabbage, sweet potatoes, and so on. Another thing to keep in mind is to try and avoid plastic food packaging, especially ready-to-eat meals that are heated up in the microwave, or be careful of reheating up your leftovers in Tupperware dishes, because there's a chemical in the plastics called phthalates that are released directly into the food from the plastic when it is heated, and then you're going to end up eating these chemicals. So, in addition to trying your best to clean up your environment and your diet, what else can you do? Well, one can incorporate a metabolic detoxification program designed to nutritionally support the intricate detoxification pathways in the body. In order to understand what constitutes balanced nutritional support for detoxification, one needs to understand the processes involved. By far, the majority of toxins are fat-soluble molecules. While water-soluble molecules are excreted through the urine, fat-soluble molecules can't directly enter into the urine, and instead they're attracted to the fat in the cell membranes. This attraction allows them to be transported inside of the cells quite easily, where they can accumulate. In order to remove toxins, the body has a complex system designed to convert these fat-soluble toxins into water-soluble molecules, after which they can be directly excreted through the kidneys or the bile. The system is called the detoxification or biotransformation system and includes two steps: Phase 1, bioactivation, and Phase 2, conjugation. Sometimes the toxins are detoxified before they're even transported to the liver by the same detoxification reactions. However, this happens in the intestinal tract. About 25% of the detoxification activity in our bodies actually occurs in the intestinal mucosa, which makes it the second most active tissue in detoxification. And all cells actually have some detoxification capacity. So phase 1 reactions are catalyzed by a number of different enzymes, the most significant family of which is the cytochrome P450 family. These enzymes convert part of the fat-soluble toxin, and the result is the generation of a transformed toxin or reactive intermediary. This reactive intermediary can readily bind to other molecules such as DNA and proteins, so it's highly reactive. It's potentially more toxic than the original toxin and must therefore be converted to a non-toxic, water-soluble molecule as soon as possible. In addition, this phase 1 reaction also generates reactive oxygen species directly as a spin-off byproduct. So one also needs to be aware that there's a lot of oxidative stress as a result of phase 1 reactions. In phase 2, conjugation of the reactive intermediate to a water-soluble molecule occurs. These reactions include glucuronidation, sulfation, amino acid conjugation, methylation. There's a whole long list of them, but essentially it requires a water-soluble molecule that can actually physically be attached to the reactive intermediary. So those water-soluble molecules, such as sulfate in the case of sulfation, or glucuronic acid in the case of glucuronidation, these molecules get used up and they need to constantly be replenished, since they're attached to the toxin to make it water-soluble and to neutralize it. Phase 2, this process also requires a lot of energy that needs to be replenished. So in phase 3, we have a neutralized toxin which can now, it's in its water-soluble form, and it can now be eliminated through the kidneys. Now, what's important to keep in mind here is that optimal excretion of this neutralized toxin can only occur if there's an alkaline urine. So if the urine is too acidic, phase 3 excretion is not going to be occurring optimally. So how do toxins accumulate in the body? Well, firstly, toxin exposures can't be considered individually because we're not exposed to just one individual toxin at a time. Also, toxins can act in an additive manner, especially if they're metabolized through the same pathways, putting strain on the same enzyme systems and using up the same cofactors more rapidly. And this leads to more toxic load that the body can handle because the pathways are getting used up. If the toxins can't be metabolized adequately, the toxic substances, remember they're fat soluble, can accumulate in the tissues and can end up remaining there for years. In this way, toxins can continue to accumulate and accumulate so that the body tissues are exposed to much higher doses of these toxins over time. Some factors which can hinder detoxification are an overwhelming toxic load. Of course, one needs to look at the additive effect of all the exogenous and endogenous toxic sources. There might be a problem with excretion. Here we are considering both the gut and the kidney function. Of course, if there's constipation or increased transit time, renal dysfunction, these can severely affect the rate at which toxins are eliminated from the body. Inefficient fuels. So there might be a macronutrient imbalance, sufficient carbohydrates to provide the energy synthesis, for example, or there might not be enough protein to provide amino acids that are used specifically in your phases. There might not also be enough antioxidants to quench the byproducts of the oxidative stress that are caused. Cofactors to drive the various phases, conjugating agents, those are the molecules that are bound to the intermediary metabolites in phase 2. So there's really many factors to consider. And of course, genetic variation, which we're going to have a little look at in the next couple of slides. All of these factors can affect a person's overall detoxification capacity. The activity of the phase 1 enzymes, remember they were the CYP450, their activity is highly variable. They are basically induced by the presence of toxins. So when there's a toxin, their activity is turned on. And these toxins often, as we saw, can come from the environment, but also from internal sources. So the more toxins that are present at any one time, the more these enzymes are activated. And of course, the higher the production of reactive intermediaries. Some environmental toxins and drugs and even specific nutrients in grapefruit can actually have an inhibitory effect on your phase 1 enzyme activity. What will happen then is inhibition of your phase 1, and what will happen is we'll see accumulation of the toxic substances in the blood and the fatty tissues. So genetic variability in enzyme activity of both phase 1 and 2 enzymes, together with nutritional status and total toxic load, explain why individuals have varying detoxification capacities for a particular substance. It can vary quite dramatically. Just look at how some people are so caffeine sensitive, or the same goes for alcohol. People have varying degrees of tolerance for these different toxins, and a lot of it comes down to genetics, and nutritional status, and their individual total toxic load. So this study is highlighting how research has found significant genetic variations in the CYP450 phase 1 enzymes in humans, and how these variations have significant impacts on a patient's ability to clear toxins. Here we can see what happens if the phase 1 enzymes are either under or overexpressed. Genetics or cofactor deficiencies may result in underexpression, leading to toxins being stored in fatty tissue and, of course, the resultant toxicity symptoms, because you're not able to excrete these toxins. They're going to start to have an effect on the whole body system. But overactivation of phase 1 enzymes is also a concern, and it's associated with high exposure to toxins that induce phase 1 enzymes. Examples are smoking, heterocyclic amines, we mentioned those are present in your charbroiled beef, and dioxins. The result is that phase 2 cannot keep up with phase 1, and then there's an accumulation of these reactive intermediaries. And remember, they are highly reactive and can cause direct tissue damage. Phase 1 and phase 2 should ideally be working in rhythm with one another, resulting in balanced and healthy detoxification. In particular, phase 2 activities must be able to keep up with the phase 1 generation of reactive intermediaries. With imbalanced detoxification, phase 1 and phase 2 are out of sync, and that means that reactive intermediaries are not immediately conjugated and removed. They can then act as reactive oxygen species and bind DNA, proteins, and RNA, causing irreversible damage to a cell. Individuals with slow phase 2 are subject to oxidative stress, inflammation, and increased risk of degenerative disorders. Bifunctional modulators are phytonutrients that support balanced detoxification by modulating phase 1 and promoting phase 2. This minimizes damage by reactive intermediaries and free radicals. Fruits and vegetables contain many bifunctional modulators, which is one reason these foods are associated with reduced susceptibilities to cancer and degenerative diseases. Some well-documented bifunctional modulators are ellagic acid from pomegranate, which can bind some toxins directly, rendering them non-toxic, and even can directly bind and protect DNA. Watercress. Oh, sorry, we're not on the watercress. Artichoke. Artichoke is a liver protectant with a long history of traditional use that provides strong antioxidant protection and can decrease the loss of glutathione after toxic exposure. Watercress contains high levels of glucosinolates, which are precursors to several bioactives that can promote excretion of carcinogens in humans. And then silymarin from milk thistle is a well-known liver protectant that may improve liver function in patients with liver disease and toxicity. It also increases glutathione and is a strong antioxidant. Catechins from green tea are also strong antioxidants, possessing anti-carcinogenic and anti-mutagenic potential and promoting healthy gastrointestinal function. It's another added benefit there. So all of those natural compounds, those plant chemicals, are bifunctional modulators, essentially balancing phase 1 and phase 2. Green tea catechins support both phase 1 and phase 2 through selective induction and modification of phase 1 and 2 enzymes, while also acting as a potent antioxidant. Nutrients that support mitochondrial function are also vital for phase 1 enzymes to work well, and they include essential cofactors for energy production, such as thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, pantothenic acid, so all your B vitamins, and magnesium as well. Here we can see the bifunctional modulators, ellagic acid and green tea catechins mentioned previously, so they're also necessary to drive phase 1. And also another extract from broccoli, indole 3-carbinol, which provides additional support for the phase 1 enzymes. Phase 2 enzymes are also highly dependent on energy and on adequate dietary protein. The amino acids glutamine, cysteine, and glycine are needed for phase 2, since they can be used to generate the sulfation and glutathione cofactors. The methyl donors, choline, methionine, and folate, are important because they provide cofactors for phase 2 conjugation reactions. Data has shown that dietary sources of choline are essential, and choline has actually now been designated as an essential nutrient. You'll see there L5-MTHF is essentially the biologically active natural form of folate, methyl tetrahydrofolate. So if one is going to provide folate to support phase 2 in a supplemental form, you definitely want to make sure that you're providing it in the biologically active form. NAC, N-acetylcysteine, is essentially just a great source of cysteine, which you see in the first bullet is important for glutathione production. Dietary antioxidants can help protect tissue from damage that can occur during biotransformation. Antioxidant nutrients that help protect the body from oxidative stress include vitamins A, C, E, zinc, selenium, and copper are also other minerals that can be beneficial. And of course, we also need to support energy production, so B vitamins and magnesium also play an important role in phase 2. So this diagram illustrates just how many nutrients are involved in the various reactions that make up the complex detoxification process. You can see how important adequate dietary intake of high-quality proteins, as well as micronutrients and phytochemicals are, as they directly influence the activity of the enzyme pathways and serve to protect the tissues from harm. So some important points to remember. Detoxification is constantly active. It is highly variable and inducible. Phase 2 depletes substrates such as glucose, amino acids, sulfate-containing compounds, glutathione, and methyl groups. These constantly need to be replenished. Phase 2 is highly energy dependent. And phase 1 can produce reactive species. Remember, the reactive oxygen species that can cause oxidative stress, and therefore antioxidants also play a very important role in detoxification. Another part of the body that plays a very important role is the gut. It's vital for elimination and is therefore crucial to supporting detoxification. Mentioned earlier that 25% of the detoxification activity in our bodies occurs in the intestinal mucosa. It's important that the gut is functioning properly in order to facilitate the removal of toxins from the body, and if constipation is a problem in an individual, it's advisable to get the gut going before doing a detox. Otherwise, a lot of the hard work done by the liver will be undone, as toxins will simply be reabsorbed. So there are two main areas to consider with regard to gut detoxification: flow and barrier function. When looking at flow, we want to be sure that the bile is being released from the gallbladder. So bitter herbal cholagogues such as artichoke and chen pea are good at getting the gallbladder to contract nicely. Insoluble fiber, increased water, and physical activity will also all help to get the gut moving. You could also make use of magnesium in either a magnesium oxide, hydroxide, or magnesium citrate form, which will also help with constipation. With regards to barrier function, probiotics are vital for promoting a healthy pH in the intestines and in preventing a leaky, inflamed gut. The addition of prebiotics, such as fructooligosaccharides, or IMO, isomaltooligosaccharides, or arabinogalactans, they all provide soluble fiber, which is metabolized into your short-chain fatty acids, which is used by the colonocytes as an energy source, so it helps them heal and repair. In addition, fiber can also help by actually binding directly to the toxins in the gut. Rice bran fiber is one such fiber, which is great as it's a gluten-free fiber source, has a low allergy potential, while flax seeds are another good option and have the added benefit of providing omega-3s. Psyllium, nice choice as well, provides a blend of soluble and insoluble fiber, which helps by providing roughage as well as supporting the intestinal lining. So why is a healthy diet not enough? Why can't you just tell someone, okay, eat eat better, and you should be able to detox just fine. Well, unfortunately, individuals who are candidates for detoxification programs, they've got a lot of those symptoms that we listed earlier, or they might even have some chronic diseases. They've probably been experiencing symptoms for a long period of time, and their total toxic load, which is accumulated over time, combined with depleted antioxidant reserves, and of course the possible genetic polymorphisms that might underlie the detoxification issues, mean that a diet on its own may not be providing enough nutrients to meet their detoxification needs. Now, many of you have probably heard of some of the fasting detox diets that are quite popular, but fasting has many adverse health effects, including decreased energy production, and as you've seen, detoxification is an energy requiring process that puts a metabolic burden on the body. Insufficient calories will also result in the breakdown of your fat tissue as well as your muscle tissue, and then you're going to find that the toxins which were stored in the fat are now released, and this is going to lead to an increased toxic load and put even more burden on the liver. Additionally, the lack of fiber in the diet will also affect bowel movements and possibly increase the reabsorption of toxins from the gut. Fasting is also known to induce phase 1 enzyme activity, and if you recall, if we upregulate phase 1 and phase 2 can't keep up, we're going to get an overproduction of reactive intermediaries which aren't sufficiently neutralized. This, combined with a lack of exogenous antioxidants, so you're not getting enough antioxidants and cofactors from dietary sources because you're fasting, so you can't drive phase 2 reactions, will result in an imbalance between the phases and, of course, overall stress and inflammation in the body that can actually worsen symptoms. What about patients with chronic gastrointestinal problems, such as a leaky gut, food allergies, or inflammation? Is it advisable to detox them? Well, if you recall from Module 1 and 2, toxins and allergens which enter systemic circulation through the gut place a burden on the liver and other organs. Therefore, it's advisable to restore the gut function first by using the 5R program. When considering an effective metabolic detoxification program, keep in mind these key points. External toxic load needs to be reduced. Here we think of dietary and environmental toxins. Hepatic mobilization of toxins need to be increased by supporting phase 1 and phase 2 enzymes. Excretion of toxins via the bile and the kidneys needs to be supported. And redistribution of toxins needs to be minimized by addressing dysbiosis in the gut. Remember, dysbiosis is associated with elevated levels of an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. This enzyme is able to break down excreted toxins, which have undergone conjugation in phase 2. This allows them to be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream and exert further toxic effects. And interestingly enough, the probiotic strain Lactobacillus acidophilus, NCFM, has actually been shown to reduce the activity of this beta-glucuronidase enzyme. So you can definitely support detoxification with appropriate probiotic uses, specific strains. This slide ties together visually everything we've been talking about today. Minimizing exposure to toxins or toxic burden is only one part of a beneficial detoxification program. Adequate nutrition is absolutely essential in providing the full spectrum of supportive cofactors, bifunctional modulators for balanced detox, antioxidant protection, and of course support for energy production. The right dietary factors that support excretion and overall gut function will also help support balanced detoxification and promote optimal health. Join me in part 2 to discuss some metagenics protocols for metabolic detoxification.